Welcome back to Story Behind the Painting. I'm your host, and today marks a milestone. You are joining us for the 16th episode of our Muzea series, where we peel back the layers of history, ego, and genius to understand the masterpieces that shaped our world. Over the last 15 episodes, we've traveled through centuries of human expression. But today, we step into the heart of the Vatican, look toward the heavens, and confront perhaps the most recognizable gesture in the history of Western civilization. High above the marble floors of the Sistine Chapel, amidst a sea of 300 figures, two hands reach out across a tiny infinite void. It is an image so famous it has become a visual shorthand for connection itself. We see it in advertisements, in parodies, and on the posters of Hollywood blockbusters. But to the man who painted it, this wasn't a brand. It was a battlefield. It was the result of a bitter rivalry between a warrior pope and a sculptor who insisted he was in the wrong job. To understand how this spark was lit, we have to go back to 1508, to a time when the artist felt his career was being sabotaged by the very man who hired him.
Welcome to Story Behind the Painting, where we dive into the most famous artworks and learn a lot from that.
To understand the creation of Adam, you have to know it was born from spite, ambition, and a colossal clash of personalities. This was not a peaceful collaboration, but a psychological cage match. In 1505, Pope Julius II decided he needed a tomb that matched his ego. He commissioned Michelangelo to build a freestanding, three-story tomb adorned with 40 life-sized statues. For Michelangelo, this was the dream, and he spent 8 months in the Carrara quarries selecting perfect marble blocks. He imagined the figures trapped inside the stone, waiting for his chisel to set them free. But then, the money stopped, and Julius grew distracted by rebuilding St. Peter's Basilica. Rumor has it Bramante whispered in the Pope's ear that building your own tomb while alive was bad luck. Bramante had a darker motive. He wanted to see the arrogant sculptor fail. He pushed the Pope to offer Michelangelo a different job, painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo was devastated because his reputation rested on the David and the Pietà. He was a man of hammer and chisel who regarded painting as a lesser, messy art. He suspected a trap and feared failure would prove his rivals right. He tried to flee Rome, but the Pope's influence forced him into the contract. Michelangelo signed his letters Michelangelo Sculptor, as a stubborn reminder he was forced against his nature. The original plan for the ceiling was simple: 12 apostles on a decorative background. Once he accepted his fate, his terribilità, that intense volcanic energy, took over. He told the Pope that a simple design would be a poor thing. He demanded total creative control. If he was going to be forced to paint, he wouldn't just decorate a ceiling. He would rewrite the entire history of the Bible across 1,000 square meters of plaster. This was the peak of the High Renaissance. Rome was trying to outshine the glory of ancient Greece and Rome. By forcing Michelangelo onto that scaffolding, Julius II unintentionally created the perfect storm. Michelangelo hated his medium so much that he decided to transcend it. He turned a flat ceiling into a muscular, three-dimensional world of painted sculpture. To understand why Adam looks the way he does, you have to know Michelangelo did not see him as a flat image. He saw him as a figure waiting to be revealed, similar to the statues he loved to create. Michelangelo's journey did not start with a brush, but with a precise, scientific interest in the human body. As a young artist in Florence, he studied how the body is built with incredible detail. While others used simple models, Michelangelo focused on the complexity of motion and the grace of the natural world. He was not just looking at the surface, he was fascinated by the mechanics of movement. He studied how a hand grasps, how an arm extends, and how weight shifts. This is why Adam looks so lifelike. You are seeing a masterclass in classical proportion and dynamic energy. Before this era, art was often still and symbolic. Michelangelo changed the world of art by introducing terribilità, a sense of awesome, intense energy. It is that sense of potential motion, a strength that feels ready to leap off the ceiling. In the creation of Adam, this power appears in contrast. Adam is serene, while God is a whirlwind of movement. Michelangelo used his skill to capture the exact moment inspiration is shared. He achieved all of this using the difficult fresco technique, applying pigments onto wet plaster. You must work quickly before the surface dries to keep colors vibrant, which leaves no room for error. Imagine Michelangelo high above the floor on a wooden platform working for 4 years with his focus turned upward. He worked with incredible focus, overseeing every detail of the vast ceiling by himself. When he finished in 1512, the achievement was historic. He transformed thousands of square feet into a masterpiece. He changed how we see the human story forever. When we look at this scene, we are witnessing a complete break from the past. For centuries, the creation of man was depicted as a literal, physical act with God standing on the ground. But Michelangelo was a child of the Renaissance, a time when humanism began to place man at the center of the universe. Look closely at Adam. In the Middle Ages, man was often portrayed as small, frail, and burdened by guilt. But Michelangelo's Adam is a crown of creation, noble, athletic, and physically perfect. He is reclining on a grassy slope, his body echoing the shape of the earth. He is fully formed, but there is a stillness to him, a lack of spirit. His finger droops, waiting for the spark that will make him truly human. Now look at the right side where Michelangelo portrays God as a muscular, silver-haired figure full of kinetic energy. God is wrapped in a swirling purple cloak surrounded by celestial figures. He is charging through the heavens like a whirlwind with every muscle strained as he reaches toward his creation. This is the most famous gap in history, the tiny space between the two fingers. By leaving that tiny space, Michelangelo creates an eternal tension and the moment just before the spark. It suggests that life is a gift that is offered but must be received, transforming creation into a spiritual act. In 1990, a physician named Frank Meshberger published a theory that the silhouette formed by God and the angels is an anatomical cross-section of the human brain. Every fold of the cloak matches parts like the cerebellum, the optic chiasm, and the pituitary gland. If this was intentional, it changes the entire meaning of the painting. Was Michelangelo suggesting that the divine spark was not just life, but intellect and the gift to think and create? It turns the painting into a tribute to the human mind itself. In October 1512, the scaffolding finally came down. Michelangelo was only 37 years old, but he emerged from the chapel a changed man. He was physically exhausted and his vision blurred, but his reputation solidified as the divine artist. He had done more than just paint a ceiling. He provided a new visual vocabulary for the human experience. When we look back at this masterpiece 500 years later, we see three major contributions that changed the course of history. First, humanizing the divine. Michelangelo brought God down from distant gold backgrounds into the realm of the human. He portrayed God with a body that breathes, moves, and feels. By doing so, he made the divine accessible and made the human form magnificent. He suggested that if we are made in his image, then the human body is the most sacred temple of all. Second, the gold standard of anatomy. Before this painting, art was often symbolic. After it, it was biological. Every artist who came after him, from Rubens to modern comic illustrators, owes a debt to Michelangelo's Adam. He proved that to capture the soul, you must first master bone and muscle. Third, the power of the gesture. He realized he did not need to show a face to tell a story. By focusing on the hands, he created a universal language. That gap between the fingers is a visual cliffhanger, an icon of potential and connection. It symbolizes the constant human search for something greater than ourselves. It is easy to forget that this image was painted by a man who did not even want the job. Michelangelo began this project in a state of fury, convinced his rivals were setting him up for public failure. Instead, through 4 years of isolation and physical sacrifice, he touched the face of genius. Today, those two fingers represent more than just a passage from a book. They represent the moment art became truly human. They remind us that through faith, science, or creativity, we are always reaching and seeking that spark. Thank you for joining us for this 16th journey into the heart of art history. I'm your host, and this has been Story Behind the Painting by Muzea. Next time we move from the high ceilings of Rome to the sun-drenched fields of France. But until then, keep looking up.
Welcome to Story Behind the Painting, where we dive into the most famous art works and learn a lot from that.